The Sheriff sit down. We have three great guests in from the Sheriff's Office. So Casey is sitting in Spencer's seat here this morning. We also have Chief Deputy Ryan Spurling. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And Cindy Brewer as well. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning.
Oh my gosh, we got three great guests here. Sheriff, why is everybody here today? What are we talking about?
Well, last week and the last couple of weeks, we've had a number of situations where we've arrested people for burglaries and recovered stolen property.
Okay.
And it becomes kind of a headache in our office if people just show up if they've heard there's a burglary and want to get something out. Things have to be logged into evidence and logged back out and properly taken care of. And that's Cindy's job in there. And recently, because of those recoveries, there's been a lot of property. And I thought, well, this would be a good time to maybe have Cindy come in and talk a little bit about the recovery process and how she returns property so people can understand that.
For sure. Ryan, let's start with you and talk about the crimes that get to where the inventory and the property gets to Cindy. So where are some of these that have been happening around the area?
Well, I know we ended up serving a warrant just last Friday on a large piece of property where there was a cache of lots of items that had been stolen, and Cindy had to process it. And it's quite a involved thing because every piece of evidence has to be documented, has to be logged, has to be handled properly because it's evidence. It's also somebody's property. And there's a process that you have to go through to get that back. And it was great that our guys came across this in their normal duties, and we were able to get a warrant and go in. And our guys have been doing a fantastic job in these areas because it's terrible when somebody breaks in and steals your stuff.
Yeah.
And then when it's happening in an increase amount in a certain area, that's usually an indicator that we have something going on, and our guys were able to ferret it out and work with the detectives and get a warrant and get in there.
And you do have to do all that due diligence with the detectives and get the warrant. It's not like if you see a rash or increasing of thefts around an area, and you'll probably, I'm sure, get calls into the sheriff's office and say, oh, I know exactly who it is, they're here.
Right.
You can't just go. I mean, you have to start putting in the legwork and finding some strings and lines of evidence that can get you to...
Same protections that you have to keep your rights and privacy under the Fourth Amendment that are offered to you are offered to people that are doing the crimes as well.
I'm glad Jeff, I appreciate you bringing that up because oftentimes we'll get into an area and people will say, well, we all know who's doing it. Do something about it. Well, did you see somebody? Well, all of a sudden, nobody actually saw anybody do anything, and nobody has anything that you can take to a court. Take before the judge for that warrant. They don't want to say anything, or they don't have the information. It's just hearsay, and oftentimes they're correct, but you still have to have the legal grounds to make that entry. And on these cases we have, but we've recovered a lot of stolen property.
So when it comes to the types of stolen property, Cindy, are there things that would easily be identifiable for folks, or if like you were involved or something was taken from your property, you have maybe an idea that it could end up here? And how long is it usually within the sheriff's office department before the conclusions of these cases?
And that depends a lot on the cases because some of them take, months, years to get through court. But, a lot of the times people can come down, make an appointment, and then if they know for sure we have their property, we can always release it on a keeper's retreat, pending trial.
Okay.
But a lot of things is people need to have serial numbers for their property, have photos of it, because, I need to have some sort of proof that it is your property. And plus, we need to be able to locate you to get your property. For example, a lot of people go up missing chainsaws, steel chainsaws. Well, luckily, Steel has a very good database and keeps track of people's serial numbers, who bought it, when they bought it, what store they bought it at. So that's actually a pretty good one.
Wow. I mean, I don't know hardly many folks that would take the time and due diligence, unless it was a high-end item, maybe like a chainsaw or something, to make sure that your serial numbers are written down. Or
right.
Even insurance companies, and I'm sure that is all plays into a part of it too, they want you to have visual records of what you got and
take photos. Take photos on your phone.
Chainsaws, firearms, jewelry, those kind of things. If you have photographs of those.
Right. A lot of people that I talk to that are retrieving property, they're like, I didn't even realize it was stolen until I went to go look for it.
Sure.
And then it's gone.
And it could be months down the line.
Exactly. So you always, and if you think something's missing, report it. It could, we don't know.
So
it's really important, Jeff, in those cases when we get burglaries happening anywhere. But if you've had a burglary at your home, or somebody's entered into your, a shed or a property or something, and your chainsaw or some tools and things like that, specific tool items are missing, that you report that, because if there's a report on file of that occurring, and then Cindy can go back to some of those reports, sometime research that report of the stolen property, and be able to call you and say, I believe we've got some of your property. Could you come down to identify it? Because if you've written the serial numbers on there, a descriptor of that property, when it was stolen, where it was stolen from, she's able to notify you and have you come down and look through that.
And those initial police reports, I'm guessing, would maybe help in the apprehension of the suspect down the road. I mean, if you're not going to say something, no one's going to know anything.
Right.
And also put your name, scratch your name on things, or your social security number, or something that we can identify and look up and find out who you are. Because a lot of the property, when we were out there on Friday, we're looking for names, and some people had written their names on property. And it's like, okay, well, let's figure out who this is.
When it comes to things, if folks, if the sheriff's office doesn't happen to come upon a large collection of stolen goods, but the items are stolen and then resold either through pawn shops or online at various online websites, how does that process work out? Are there certain protections where, I think a pawn shop has to call somebody about certain types of items?
They have to take ID when they take something in to be sold. Generally, most pawn shops that do it the way they're supposed to, if you bring an item in to be pawned, they take your ID, they know what the item is that you brought in, and that stuff can be run for stolen. Or if we contact a pawn shop and say we're looking for a certain item, they'll release who brought the item in, and we can backtrack it that way.
And it normally doesn't go out on the floor like that same day. They hold on to it for a while in case something like this pops up.
And law enforcement can do what we call law enforcement hold. If something does come in right away and we see something in there that, because we'll check the same thing. If there's certain items that we think might be in that area in a pawn shop, we can go into the store, talk to the pawn owner, look at that item, and if we believe that was an item that's stolen or is going to come up as stolen, we can do a request to hold for that pawn shop, so they can't sell it until we've been able to look into that.
And Ryan, when you come in with your kind of annual reports and we talk about crime numbers and stats, oftentimes it's just one or two crimes that kind of change the numbers, from no crimes to one, that makes 100% increase, things like that. So in this sense, how impactful was this sheriff's office this
We had
bust?
a significant increase of burglaries and thefts in the area that we ended up serving this warrant on. So it bled out or radiated from where these people were staying and where they were stealing stuff, and we saw the increase on our statistics.
And oftentimes too, these are kind of tip of the iceberg crimes. If
Sure.
this is the type of crime that's going on here, there's sometimes likely other more elevated crimes going on as well.
Interestingly enough, we've talked about this, and I don't have the actual, I can't tell you on every single case, but it appears that recently a number of these circumstances have been occurring from people from out of the area. And things like burglaries especially, they're a crime of opportunity. And if you're living in an area where you don't have the amount of law enforcement that you do in other areas, and it's easier pickings in some areas than others, and the consequences aren't as great, you go to those areas. And you go to an outlying area that, like us, from other places, and set up shop. And a number of these recently have been people from out of the area.
Do you guys get a lot of help from those video doorbells and things like that these days?
Yes.
That comes
We've been
in?
using them a lot.
We've been using them a lot, yeah.
The people that have good quality video, we're able to put it out on social media, and I cannot believe the response that we get. Almost always we get the person identified very quickly, or located, or somebody gives us a tip. People like to get involved. It's impossible for the few number of law enforcement that we have to be everywhere all the time. So the citizens engaging in the law enforcement process is really big to us.
I mean, I've seen the shares on some of those posts just are astronomical, and then they'll tag who they think the person is.
Yeah, I know.
Hey,
we had one turn himself in
because they were tagged.
Because he was like, "Oh, I've been had."
Yeah. Wow.
A few years ago, we didn't have that, and when Chief Spurling came to work, he was really instrumental in setting up our our Facebook and those different items where you can get that information out. And in our neighborhood watch areas for our block watch captains, when the detectives or one of our people are able to put out a photograph of somebody at a burglary scene or something, or an item that's missing or type of a vehicle, it's amazing how quickly people can call in and say, I just saw that truck, it's parked at so-and-so's house, or it's there all the time, or this is whose truck it is. That information comes in and really, really quickly gets back. And the other one that was kind of interesting, a number of years ago, we had somebody had actually set up a game cam and got a photograph of some folks and brought that in, and as soon as they brought that in and showed the detectives, our guys knew every one of the people in the picture.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had dealt with 1% of the people cause 99% of the crime, and so as soon as those faces were there, our detectives knew every one of them.
Yeah.
One critical piece, though, Jeff, is if we can get a message out, obviously cameras, but do not report crimes on social media. We don't have the manpower to monitor our social media all the time. Report crimes through MACECOM, through 911 or the non-emergency number, because otherwise it may be a week before we even get to it.
Right.
So I just want to make sure people don't think they can put it on social media and we'll respond to it immediately, because we just don't have the manpower to do that.
Yeah, a lot of those are just kind of the output. They're not necessarily the input coming in on the information. This is a good look for you here, Sheriff, with this on the other side.
I like this. I was thinking that maybe Spencer should just move over a little bit. I could handle the...
Very nice.
I like this.
Ryan, Cindy, Casey, good to see you guys.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for coming in.